What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Temple Talk. I appreciate you all tuning in. It has been a fantastic ride. We have been able to talk about so many amazing things this past year, and we've had some amazing guests teach us a lot about our bodies, teach us about life, teach us about their stories. It's been awesome. You saw the intro graphic today. We have another amazing guest, and I just can't wait to get to the conversation because it's going to be awesome. We're talking about leadership today. We are talking about leadership. And this individual has seen leadership on the highest levels in the most craziest of circumstances and has been a leader and has followed leadership for an incredible amount of time. I'm gonna put it up again so you can see U.S. Marine vet and minister at Helping Hands Ministry, Duane Dixon, and we're gonna bring him um, in a few just to talk about his journey, what he's been able to do throughout the years, and it's just
It's just
everything that
everything that
we when I've been around
when
this
I've been
this
around
man,
this man,
it's just been
it's
awesome
just
from
been
the
awesome
beginning.
from the beginning.
So without
So
further
without
ado,
further ado,
Minister Dixon,
Minister
how are you,
Dixon,
sir?
how are you, sir?
Good evening. How about yourself? I'm doing well.
I
How are you?
I am
I
doing
I'm
excellent
doing
by the grace of
excellent by the
God, and I
grace of God,
cannot
and I
complain.
cannot complain.
How are you?
I'm
How
delighted
How
to
are
are
be
you?
you?
with you.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I said I'm delighted to be with you today.
Thank you so much for
Thank you
joining
so much
us.
for joining
It's an
us.
honor to have
It's an
you.
honor to have
Thank you
you.
for all you do,
Thank
not
you for
just
all you do,
for the
not just
body of
for the
Christ,
body of
but
Christ,
what you do for
but
our
what you
country.
do for our
It's
country. It's
phenomenal,
it's
and we can
phenomenal,
never
and we can
repay
never
the effort
repay
and in the effort and love
the
that you have
effort and
given.
love
So
that you
thank
give.
you.
So thank you.
To God be the glory.
So
So
before we get
before we
before we
get
get into it,
before we
let's
get
talk
into it,
about
let's
your
talk about
backstory.
your
How did
backstory.
you
How did you
choose
choose
and get
to
into
get
the
into
Marine Corps?
the Marine Corps?
Well, at 9 years old, I made a declaration that I would join the Marine Corps, stay in for 20 years, retire, move to Baltimore, and travel around the world with women of my choice. This was my claim to fame at 9 years old. And
Wow.
Wow.
obviously, I am married happily, have granddaughter. So those are the women that I travel with. Didn't move to Baltimore, but I'm here in Hartford County. So one out of three, I guess, was just my ratio there. I did do the 20 years, retired. Um, I had a lot of family who were Army. I had a couple who were Navy, and I just wanted to do something different. The Marine Corps was something that stuck out to me. I had a music scholarship. Counselors fought very hard to help me obtain, and I chose the Marine Corps over that, which was a little bit tough for me because my mother had to sign the paperwork. I was only 17,
Wow.
and she wanted me to go to school, um, obviously with an opportunity to receive a scholarship. That was her preference. However, she supported me and allowed me to join, and so I was able to enter. She signed for me at 17, and I managed to stick it out for 20 years by the grace of God.
What made you
What
make the
made
decision
you make the decision
to become
to become
to join the Marines at
to join the
9?
Marines at
It was something I saw a lot of family. I saw commercials, but I saw a lot of family in real life who were in the military. Like I said, the majority of my family. I have a brother who spent 24 years in the Army. He still teaches ROTC down in South Carolina. I have about four uncles who were in the Army. I have all kinds of distant family members who were in the Army, and I just wanted to do something. I had two who were in the Navy, um, but the Marine Corps, we didn't have a lot of representation. So I, it was time for the Marine Corps to be represented in the family.
That's awesome
that's awesome
because when I think
because
about
when I think about
the conscious choice to be
the
different,
conscious choice to be different,
most people
most people,
they don't choose the Marine Corps
they don't choose the Marine Corps
because
Oh, I know I was a recruiter.
because it's
so it was.
so. It was.
We've always heard that the
I've
Marine
heard. We've
Corps is the
always heard that the
toughest.
Marine Corps is the toughest.
What were some of the things that
What were some of the
you
things
had to
that
go through
you had to go through
while you were in the Marine Corps?
while you were in the Marine Corps?
Well, it was a bit, again, being able to understand what order was. One thing the Marine Corps instills into all recruits, male or female, all recruits, is instant obedience to orders. That's the bedrock of Marine Corps boot camp. Instant obedience to orders. The way that we achieve that is through repetition. Some people use the terminology that the Marines brainwashing. No, it's not brainwashing. You do something over and over and over again until it becomes second nature to you. That's how we instill it. If you move too slow, get back, do it again. Too slow, get back. Well, eventually you learn to move with a certain level of speed. If you ask a question, you don't respond quick enough, stop, restate it. Stop, restate it. Get louder. I can't hear you. That's not loud enough. That's not loud enough. So you learn to speak at a volume where you can be heard, that things are heard clearly. So again, that the way that we instill that instant obedience to orders is through repetition.
So you have to do it
So you have
over
to
and
do it
over and over
over and
again.
over and over again.
Yes, absolutely. And if you don't get it through verbal means of communication, we have a physical means of communication as well. Nobody strikes you, but you go through a rigorous amount of exercising until you learn to move when told to move.
So how
how
do you deal
how
with
do you
that?
deal with that?
One thing I would say my drill instructor one of our drill instructors used to say to us, and it was pretty, it came true, should I say. He said, you may be some undisciplined things, but you will be some strong things. And so the body will make you break when you don't want to break. We break the body, that's going to break the mind.
Wow. I'm just thinking about the level of mental fortitude it takes and the commitment it takes to your leadership. Marines are often
Marines are
on the
often
front
on
line
the front line
and
and
they go out
they go out
first. That's correct, right?
That's correct, right?
Yes, sir.
It takes a certain
It
level
takes
of
a certain
warrior
level of
to get there.
warrior to get there.
Yes.
Can you talk about the
Can you talk
principles
about the
that warrior
principles
needs to have?
warrior needs to have?
Oh, yes. Well, you just mentioned a few moments ago about the mindset to be different, particularly when you're choosing something like the Marine Corps. Well, that mindset is one that requires some information, if you will. And as a recruiter, I will share that information with young men and women because my philosophy was this: it's better to never join the military than to leave with bad papers, because that will follow you the rest of your life. And so what I tried to instill in them was that the Marine Corps is serious about what we do. And I would often tell them, you're going to be my replacement. And I'm very good at what I do. So in order for you to replace me, the Marine Corps is looking for top notch. And so that would just be enough to stir them up, to get them to a place of understanding just how serious this thing was, to place themselves in my shoes, to place themselves in my position, to be able to begin to see from my perspective. And I would bring them to that place of personalizing it so that they understand, okay, this thing is very serious. This could be life or death. This is not a decision to run away from school because you're tired of going to school. This is not a place to run to because you don't want to take orders from mom or dad. Because if you can't take orders from mom or dad, this is not the place for you. We can't use you. We will not tolerate you. But that warrior mindset is one that we build. You make a decision to join the Marine Corps based on the information that's provided, based on the things that you inform us of, because we sit with the recruits and we ask them questions. A level question: what's most important in life to you? And we have what we call leadership tags, and what they are: intangible benefits, and that's what we work from. We tell them to identify 3 things that are most important to them, and many of them will say leadership, discipline. Some will say travel and adventure, but most of them, leadership and discipline, were 2 of the 3, is what they wanted. And so we began to explain to them what I'm expressing now about how we begin that process, how it works all the way through. And from there, it's up to them to make a decision. Once they've been properly informed of what the requirements are, what the expectations are, it's up to them now to make a decision. Once they make that decision, now we turn them over to the Marine Corps Recruiting Command, which is where our drill instructors land at the Marine Corps recruit depots. And from there, that's where they're being made and molded as Marines.
Now, I think what's incredibly important is to talk about that there is a mindset that needs to be molded in order for you to get in. There's a mindset that you need to uphold in order for you to be sustained there. And there's a mindset that you need to hold on to in order to get to the next level. When we start talking about when you start talking about building the mindset of each individual, how do you how do you how do you deal with each person? Because everybody's different. And when you're a leader required to lead men, whether it be into battle or wherever, there you have to handle each person differently. How do you handle each different personality?
Personality.
Well, again, you have to get on a personal level with them. As the recruiter, I'm the first line of defense. So I'm the first one to make contact with them. I get to know who they are. Before I begin to let them know what the Marine Corps has to offer them, I want to find out who they are. Basic information, what their background is, athletes, drugs, school clubs, how active are you in the community? I want to know those things because these are things that I'm going to use. I'm storing in the back of my mind as I'm inquiring so that once they begin to speak and I hear what they have to offer, if you will, now I have a foundation to build from. I have a foundation now to be able to converse with. But without that information, I won't know. So once we have connected and they know what's expected of them, I can now sit down with them and tell them, okay, these actions are going to need to change. And I'm going to help you do that. So as a recruiter, I don't just put them in. We don't just put them in. We hold them in the delayed entry program. We teach them the customs and courtesies of the Marine Corps. We teach them the Marine's hymn, the Marine's birthday. We take them through physical fitness. We run them. We take them through trails. We give them mock physical fitness tests that they will be required to take in the Marine Corps with the pull-ups, the crunches, and the run. We take them through all of that. We also occasionally will bring drill instructors from Parris Island and allow them to have firsthand with them so that they understand what they're going to encounter down at Parris Island. And so we take them through all types of things to get their mindset prepared to go into boot camp. So the physical and the mental aspect we work on prior to sending them to boot camp to ensure that they'll be successful.
So now when you think when I hear you talking about being dealing with the different personalities and you walk with them and each person is different. I'm I'm curious. Can you take us back to a time because this had to be done to you in order for you to get to this level and that you are. in your journey. Now, when you start talking about the levels of leadership that you had to be subject to it in order to learn, talk to me about a time where it was life or death threatening things, but your leader got you through it.
Got you through it.
Well, I would say I didn't have a life or death, but it was a serious situation where I had some good leadership in Panama. I was in Panama in 1988, before Operation Just Cause kicked off in '89. Day 7 there, we had some enemy forces trying to infiltrate, and there was some rounds released, and one Marine was killed, and it became a mockery from Panama at that time. Noriega was saying that Marines were shooting at palm trees because they declared it to be a friendly fire incident, which it was not. It was confirmed by the CEA. We had 6 kills, and they briefed us on everything from the hospitals and the bodies washing ashore from over at Howard Air Force Base. But I was at a point then I was ready to hang it up because the media had me messed up, because they were reporting something that we knew to be opposite. We knew that there were kills of the enemy. We knew that. It had been confirmed. Like I said, CIA agents briefed us. However, the media portrayed it as friendly fire. We had 1 Marine killed due to friendly fire. And so I was ready to at that point, rule everything out, leave the Marine Corps, leave the military, be done with everything. But I had an E9. He was not, he was an acting sergeant major. That's the equivalent of a sergeant major in the Marine Corps, which is a master gunnery sergeant. He holds a technical field, whereas a sergeant major holds an administrative billet. And he talked me through it. He says, listen, you have a lot going for you. I know you're uptight about some things. And he just sat down with me, shared some things with me, told me, hey, this is going to be okay, man. These are things you have to learn. These are life things. You really have to become, you got to become accustomed to what's going on in life. Things are not going to always be as you like them to be. But that's what we do as Marines. We improvise, we adapt, and we overcome. And so he sat down with me, told me, hey, man, you got a bright future ahead of you. I think you can do great things for the Marine Corps. And when you feel within that you can't provide that to the Marine Corps anymore, it's time for you to leave. But he says, you will know. It's in your heart, you will know. He said, but I'm sure you're going to stick around for quite a few years. So he motivated me in a time when I was really ready to just hang it up based on an early experience. But one thing that sticks out with us as Marines, the Marine Corps' core values are honor, courage, and commitment. So those are the things that we reinforce whenever Marines reach a situation like I was in. We reinstate the core values to give them something to feed on mentally.
So, what was it about the situation that almost made you quit?
Well, we were in a situation where we had lost 1 Marine. Corporal Garrity had been killed at that point. The media was the driving force there, and I felt that the Marine Corps should have corrected them. And because the Marine Corps was allowing this lie, as I deemed it to be, which it was, they're not fixing it. They're probably part of this problem. And so I was ready to hang that up. Everything that I dreamed of, everything that I worked hard for, I was ready to hang it up. I'd only been in, I think, 3 years at that particular point. So I was ready to hang it up. But he was able to notice it in me. That's one of the things when you ask about that leadership, how you deal with people at different levels. He was able to communicate with me because they don't take time to deal with young Marines. Typically at that level, their noses are too high. They deal with their peers and those who they're trying to appease above them. They typically don't come that low. And so that taught me something. That was a lesson within itself, that he took the time to pull me aside because he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself at that time because I was frustrated with the situation.
That is profound. especially the gap in leadership that you just spoke about, that regardless of what his position was and what the norm was, he literally took the time and saw something in you that at the time you weren't thinking about because of what was happening, but it was placed there. He was placed there in that situation for that time to help you get to the next level. And because of that, now you are a veteran helping other people. Minister Dixon, can you talk about what are the different stages and ranks in the military?
In the military.
Well, we have from the enlisted ranks, we have the E1 through E9, which is private through sergeant major. And you have the O1 through the O6s, which you're talking second lieutenants to colonels. Then you're talking to general officers. You're going up from a brigadier general to a 4-star general, a 1-star to a 4-star general. So that's the 06 through 010 ranks.
So now, for those that may not get why this is important, can you talk to us about the phrase "and that's an order" and why, no matter how they feel, what they're thinking, their point of view, the second that statement is said, there's no other conversation had. There's nothing but action. Can you go into that?
Yes. Well, we have what we call lawful orders. If it comes from a competent authority, that they issue lawful orders. That law is based on the Uniform Code of Military Justice, military court. The military judicial system is what it is. And so you understand what your requirements are, and you understand what laws are contained within the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And you adhere based on understanding, because if you do not, you are going to be dealt with. Like I said, it's the judicial system for the military, and it works just like it does out here in the civilian sector. But the thing is, you don't want to take people there. So in the Marine Corps, we have a simple understanding here. We have this saying, and well, it's beyond a saying. It's a code, if you will. As junior Marines or as subordinates, we understand this is it. It is not mine to question why. It is mine to do or die. That's the code. There's no room for question. I do what I'm told to do, or I could possibly die. That's what it is. It's as simple as that. And pretty much any Marine you run into, you ask them, hey, what's the code, man? It is not mine to question why. It is mine to do or die. That's it. That's how we operate.
Wow. It's when I'm hearing it, it's just, like I said, you read about it, you may see it in movies, but to hear it, I've never heard that term before. So to hear that, and then also going back to what you were saying earlier about, the instillment of following orders, or else you may lose your very life if you don't follow the orders. When we talking about this, the practices and why it's important, because for me personally, I believe that it's important because that sergeant, that general, that person that is ranked higher than you worked hard to get there, and they have experienced a few things that you may not be privy to, and it is kind of like how you say. I don't want to say respect is like, I feel like it's overused sometimes, but in a sense, it's like a high level of respect. But what does that leader? Can you go through what that leader has done, or examples of what that leader has done in order to get that level of respect?
Well, one thing we'll say, leaders aren't made, if you will, or aren't born. A lot of people say true leaders are born. I beg to differ there. Leaders are made based on what they present. And based on what they present, we're talking respect goes two ways. When you learn that your subordinates are men, they're women, they're to be respected, you can earn their respect. You don't demand respect, you earn respect. And so, too often, people with rank tend to believe that they've earned that right just based on their rank, but that is not correct. Many of them have followed the right path. They've done the right schooling. They've done those things. They had the right time limit in the military to obtain rank. That does not earn you respect. You earn respect based on the way that you lead. If you don't lead properly, you will find that there's a lot of disrespect. But many of those leaders try to force their way in because even though they see the disrespect, rather than looking within, they begin to attack. And so they want to start using this uniform code of military justice against the younger or their subordinates, or writing bad reports on people who are beneath them because someone doesn't respond the way that they want them to. However, they've not shown that they are worthy of that respect. Now, don't misunderstand me. Just because subordinates don't receive the respect from superiors, they are not. There's not a green light to disrespect anyone above you. That's not the case at all. But when you talk about those people in those positions, respect is earned.
So now, what are the qualities? Let's talk about both sides of the coin here. What are the qualities of a great of what? Let's start with a great leader. What are some of the qualities of a great leader that you've seen? This is why they've earned the respect, and this is what they've done over time.
Pretty simple, a couple of them. First of all, know your people, know their strengths, know their capabilities, and employ them accordingly. Don't try to place them in situations that they're incapable of handling without proper guidance or the proper instruction. And then you don't just give it to them and turn them loose. You have to ensure that they are capable. If they are not, you utilize those who are most capable for those things, because everyone has strengths and weaknesses. It's your position as a leader to figure out what the strengths and the weaknesses are. And like I said, to employ those individuals based on their capability. They all have the basic training, but there are people who excel in other things, in certain things. And so that's how you employ them. But you don't minimize the one who doesn't excel in a certain thing. You use them where they excel. And collectively, you get things accomplished as a team, because you need them all. Everyone makes up the team. And so that's, you know them. The next part of that is to know yourself and seek self-improvement. If you fail to do that, you're going to find some lapse and gaps in leadership. If you're always trying to encourage your people to get better, but you can't do it yourself, you're not going very far. Because just as you see them, they see you. You see weaknesses in them, they see weaknesses in you. They see strength, you see strength in them, they see strength in you. So I mean, there's a mirror image going on here. And so when you know that mirror is at work, you'll find yourself keeping yourself sharp, keeping yourself in tune, and then they're more apt to hear you, because they recognize that you're not only speaking, you're operating. What you're asking, you're doing.
What I love about what you just said is the fact that great leaders see the greatness in people. They also see the improvements that people need to make, but they also see it in themselves. That ability to take an inventory, as is often said in the church, take an inventory of yourself, take an inventory of your mind, your actions. Am I doing this right? Am I helping them to be the best version of themselves? What I'm hearing you saying is, even in the cases of the Marines, we were talking about it earlier, it's life and death when it's battle time. And you need to know that your leader that you're running behind is leading you in the right direction and leading you to a place where you can be successful, where you come out victorious. Now, with that same thought process, let's flip the coin. What are some terms where you find some leaders that you've seen that need a lot more improvement?
Well, we had one lieutenant when I was at a unit that I deployed with, the unit I did my 2 combat tours with, the Kansas unit. We had a first lieutenant who was a habitual liar. To the degree, it was so well known that while we were in Kuwait about to go into Iraq, we would have staff meetings in the mornings and in the evenings. In the Command Operations Center, we would have staff meetings. And at the end of the PowerPoints, based on what was laid out, what our next moves were going to be, what was going on, there were bets being taken by officers on which lie he was going to tell next, or how he was going to try to avoid another task. And they were taking bets on another officer, which is pretty unsatisfactory, because at that level, you should have some integrity about yourself. He lacked it, and it was known. And as a senior enlisted guy, I had to keep tight reins on my young Marines, because they often wanted to confront him because of his lying. And he was constantly lying, constantly, almost like he couldn't stop for no reason. And so other people from other units, external units, had junior Marines who were challenged on his lies. I wouldn't allow mine to go there, because I told him it's not our position to critique him. It's our position to keep him successful. That's our function. I would go to him and I would deal with him, but I wouldn't allow them to deal with him. I would talk to him one-on-one regarding what's going on, but I would never let them deal with it. And I would remind them over and over again, it's not our role. We're not his critics. Our function is to keep him successful. When we do that, we're doing our jobs. Fate will take care of the rest. We do our job, fate will take care of the rest.
So, can you talk to, because that's incredibly dangerous from what I'm hearing. Can you talk to us about what the damages of having a leader like that does? What are the damages?
Well, it erodes any ability to lead effectively. It hinders confidence, because when you can't trust someone, your confidence in their ability to lead is not there. And if you don't have confidence in their ability to lead, in essence, they're no good as a leader, particularly if you're a subordinate. I mean, it's bad enough when those above you are not confident in your ability to lead, but when you have those below you who have no confidence in your ability to lead and trust you, have no trust for you at all, that's a bad place. And it was a very, very bad, that was a very challenging time for me. Very challenging time.
So now, when I'm thinking about this, this is Temple Talk. We're talking with Minister Duane Dixon of Helping Hands Ministry, a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, and we're talking to him about leadership. Minister Duane, let's get into that just a little bit more. I want to know how, because dissension in the ranks in that level is incredibly dangerous, because then what about going into battle? What about going into combat? And you said that the subordinates, were in your unit, you kept them locked in. They didn't do certain things, but in other units, they would challenge him. If they did that out in the field, that would be incredibly dangerous. How do you deal with that?
Remind them of our role and what our function is. Because if you allow that frustration to fester, either you're going to end up saying something to him or doing something to him that's going to cost you your career, because you're going to jail. If you do something out of order, you're going to jail. You're going to the brig. You're going to be discharged, and that's going to follow you the rest of your life. to give in to somebody else. And I would always remind them, he's not worth it. He's not worth it. We're bigger than that. We understand who we are. We have integrity. That's what Marines had. Well, he's a Marine. He doesn't have integrity. He's not a true Marine. He's picked up a title. He's gone. He's gotten his degree. He's become an officer. Yes, he's done what he's done. He's not a Marine. And it will show up because eventually your career is going to end. Your term, I won't say, because he was only in at that particular time, 4 years, I think, 3-4 years. But again, he's not worth it. I would remind him, you have to understand, your role is to keep him successful. Don't engage. Don't even think about it. It's not worth it. Hold fast to your integrity. Be true to who you are. Be true to who you told the Marine Corps you were going to be when you raised your right hand. You swore to the Marine Corps and your nation what you were going to do under oath. That's what you stay true to.
I love that because it rings true on so many levels as as a person. And we think about in the church, our leaders, they give up a lot, and their experiences with God and experiences in life have led them here to this point to be able to lead us in the way that we have. And then a reason why I love the Marine Corps mentality is because, especially how you led your team, it's like, hey, it's not our job to do this. Our job is to do X. And if we stay in that, what our job is, I just imagine how dominant we would be and continue to be. So now we're thinking about that. Let's talk about. Can you tell us a time and where you talk to us about the combat and when you've been into combat in different places and what's important for you as a Marine, as a soldier, when you're in combat?
Well, the key thing is to keep your composure, to be vigilant, aware of what's going on, aware of your surroundings, but to keep your composure, because a lot goes on in the combat zone. I mean, a lot. From rockets hitting 1 o'clock, 1:30 in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, mortars hitting. We had a couple situations where I can say personally, I know it was nothing but the Lord. Speaking of situations where there was close calls, we had an instance. I had gone with 2 of my Marines over to a position. Oh, actually, next to the Euphrates River, actually. And we were over at that position, and I had my optics tech looking at some optics, and I had one of my Marines dealing with a mortar that had been damaged. As they were repairing, I was helping the optics technician. We were at the back of a Humvee. All of a sudden, I see a flare go in the sky. And I said something about it. I'm like, man, why are these guys shooting flares in daytime? This other guy who was in that had been over in that area that we were at said, oh, they've been doing that a lot lately. Before he could get lately out, we heard 2 big boom, boom, mortar hit, rocked that Humvee that we were standing on the back of. And if it wasn't for the Humvee, the front of it cover, we would have caught all caught shrapnel. That could have been bad, which there was one who got some debris, but he wasn't injured in a major way. It was minor injuries, but it lifted the front of that Humvee. The concussion lifted the Humvee that we were working on the tailgate of, actually. And so there's a lot going on. But at that instant, you say, what's the mindset there? Well, the mindset there is now nobody knows where it came from. So now you have to form a perimeter. Outbound fire is going just to make sure there's not an assault taking place for a few seconds. Then that firing ceases. So you can start to get inventory, find out, like the Marine who was injured in that particular instance. You take an inventory and all that. So it's a lot happening there. A lot of dynamics at work in any time. And about 1 week before we left the area that we were in, I had to assume the position as a guard chief so another guy could retire. They were trying to hold him and were going to deny his retirement. So I told them, let him go home. I'll cover it. Well, they were really trying to mess with him, but after about a week, I convinced them I would do it. No problem. So a week before we left, we were switching over with another unit. And typically I would go out and brief. There's about 30 guards that we had. And I would go out and I would brief them before I released them to their posts. This particular day, I was looking at Fox News and I hadn't put on my gear yet. So this 1E7 came to me and said, hey, Gunny, you about to go out brief the guys? I said, I'll be out in about 10 minutes. He said, okay, I'm headed over to the other building. He walks out. Literally about 5 minutes later, I was reaching for my helmet and my flak vest to go outside, because normally when I go out, there's about probably 14 or 15 of the guys out. Some of them are smoking. They're just hanging out, just waiting for everyone else to come, just hanging out, laughing and joking or doing whatever. This particular day, nobody was out there, thank God, except for one. And so as I grabbed my gear, I was about to put on my helmet, and we got hit with what's called a 10-round fire for effect. They dropped 10 mortars on our compound simultaneously. They just one after the other, to the degree that they took us out probably about 3/4 of our resources on that fire. And we heard screaming. I went out into the open area. There was one Marine, and he had an artery that had been severed. Blood everywhere. But had we been out at the normal time, that's about 35 Marines, well, 30, the corpsmen, the 30 Marines, the 2 corpsmen and myself, so about 33 people would have been gone, because the vehicles had shrapnel gone through the driver's door and the passenger door. Radiators had been punctured. The building that we had guys sleeping in, about 18 feet up, you see shrapnel on the walls. So it was a bad situation, bad. So when you say, what do? You, again, keeping composure. You have to keep your mind where it needs to be, because there's a lot going on. You're going to see a lot. We brought in people missing arms. We brought in people who have been killed, enemy and friendly. We bring the enemy in as well. We would fly them out, turn them over to the Iraqi military, the Iraqi government, I'm sorry. We would turn them over. So we had friend info we would bring into the compound, take them over to shock trauma. The ones we could save, we saved. The ones we couldn't, cover them, get an aircraft in to get them out of there. So there's a lot, like I said, a lot going on in that situation.
That's a lot to take in. And I love the mentality of staying calm in situations, but as a civilian, I would be remiss to say that that is incredibly hard, and that is learned. When to be able to stay calm like that, I liken it to when things fall apart in our lives and things happen one after the other, and it's our if I'm speaking to the saints, it's our ability to stay locked in on what God promised us, that He would never leave us or forsake us, that keeps us calm in those situations when the bombs are flying and things are blowing up around us, to keep us centered. Now, we're coming down to the end here, and if you have any questions for Minister Dixon, please put them in there. Put it in the chat. I definitely seen that. I'll put it up on the screen. But I want to let's talk as we come to the end. Talk to the notion of what is required. Say you're not in leadership. What are your tips to best support our leaders?
Well, I'm going to go twofold with that. I'll give you the military, because really it's the same, except that I feel that there's a greater responsibility in kingdom, to understand that your leaders have a role, and that in that role they need support. You don't rely on other people to support. You commit to support. When you commit, now you can encourage others to commit. But until such time, you can't urge anyone to do anything. So the first thing to deal with is you commit to support. That's what I say for those beneath. going over into the kingdom side. Leaders are called by God, sent. They need support. Every element needs a support. Those generals, those colonels, they didn't all become generals and colonels because they were just smart. They took over units that had people operating under them, making them look good. That's how they were able to advance. Because if people weren't making them look good, they couldn't advance. So it's important to have people in place to support. Now, you have to understand that even in that element of support, there's going to be leaders that God is requiring things of as well. Since we're talking about leadership, because I look at people who follow, and sometimes the leaders forget that when you get good followers, that you still got to maintain. In one instance, and I'll be brief with it, Moses, over in Deuteronomy 32, 51 and 52, Moses. I'll read it from the King James and I'll read expeditiously. Verse 51, he says, because ye trespass against me among the children of Israel at the waters of Meribah Kadesh in the wilderness of Zin, because ye sanctified me not in the midst of the children of Israel. Yet thou shalt see the land before thee, but shalt not go thither unto the land which I give the children of Israel. Now, because Moses failed to lead properly, he had some people following. Some people were out of whack, so he got upset with the ones that were out of whack. You talked about earlier meeting people where they are. You have to deal with people where they are, because here's the thing here. You will never be able to meet a person at a place that they've not arrived. It doesn't matter whether it should be, how long they should have been. Until they arrive, you will never meet them at that place. So how do you meet them? You go where they're at and bring them to where they need to be. That's how you have to deal with it, because those that are down there are not always going to see what they need to see. So just as I had someone talk to me, help me, this is what I glean from that. Sometimes you got to go to them where they're at. You don't wait for them to come up. You bring them up.
I love that, because the greatest leaders in history, they've done that. And you're a great leader because of who you empower to be great and who you empower to lead. And I think that understanding, like you were saying when you were talking about that leader who had a title, but with no, it, because he lied so much, it was of no substance and people didn't respect it. So regardless of the experiences, it's what was his experience with his subordinates, the people that were around him, the people that were under him. And when you hear that, I'm hearing the the change in, the great leaders are the ones that not only empower you to be great, but they find you in your low place, as God found us. He always finds us in the valley. Anywhere we go, we can't hide from him. And he meets us in our low place. And the great leaders, they show up in your low place and help build you up, so that in turn, you then turn into somebody who can help build somebody else up. So now I want to talk about, because this is an aspect of leadership that we don't really get into a lot, is the mental health of the leaders. Because when you're talking about being a Marine, and you're talking about being in leadership, in being in leadership, you take on a lot. And you take on a lot of responsibilities. And a lot of times you take on people's problems in order to meet them where they are. And sometimes there's a lot that they don't even get the chance to talk about because they're helping so much. Can you talk about the dynamic of mental health in leaders and how important that is?
That is
Oh, absolutely. Um, Being mentally fit is the only way that you can make it as a leader, because not only do you have to keep yourself, everyone under you, you have to keep. You're responsible for. Not the ones you like, not the ones that like you, not the ones who seem to respond to you the most quickly, even the ones who don't respond as quickly. You're responsible for all. And so the thing is, how can I minister wholeness if I'm fragmented? Wholeness ministers wholeness. You follow? So you have to keep your mental capacity where it needs to be. And when it's not there, you need to see someone, you need to talk to someone, because if you don't, you are going to be brought down. Problems, people, talking about Moses, people. After all that God did for Moses, after all that Moses saw God like nobody else saw him. But guess what? People messed with that. Based on what was going in their ear, it got here to the place that it brought him to a place of anger. So now he loses in effectiveness as a leader because he didn't keep what was in him strong. He allowed that other stuff to go in his ear, affected his mind, and now hearing God was not really his priority to the degree that it cost him. And so you as the leader have to have it together. You can't not be. You can't be half cocked, so to speak, because if you are, you're going to become uncocked, and it can cost you. And so when I use Moses there, I don't, again, not to down him, by all means, that's a learning opportunity there for leaders and followers, because just as God expects his leaders to be a certain way, the followers are the same way. We look at Aaron. Aaron had a similar situation because he wasn't following properly. He had to unrobe. And when he pulled that robe off, the anointing left him. So God has requirements for both the leaders and the followers.
So now, what about a question just came in the chat? You brought up Moses, and Moses was dealing with a lot after he had done so much, and he went through so much, and he was getting it on every side. What do you think? What do you think leaders should do? I want to make sure I get the question right. How should leaders respond in controversial situations? But before you answer, this is powerful, and specifically to Marines, because when things hit the fan, it can be a lot of opinions start flying in the heat of battle. I can imagine that if a soldier had gone through was going through for the first time that incident that you described, that's a lot to take in. And the natural instincts of like, no, we need to do this, even though they're hearing something else, kick in. How should leaders respond in those controversial situations?
Now, when you say controversial, you're saying when you see a subordinate operating outside of what you're expecting, or let me make sure I understand the question.
In a sense, yeah. Let's start there. Maybe they're operating outside of what they're expected to do. Let's start there.
Well, again, we'll go outside the heat of battle, and we'll deal with in the heat of battle. I'll take you both locations. Tying it all together, because Christians, we're in spiritual warfare. You can't expect your leader to talk to you like a recruiter, because recruiters are going to talk to you nice. They're going to tell you some things. They even get to feed you. But once you pass a recruiter, now you're in the Army or the Marine Corps or whatever branch. Now the talk is going to be tough. So you can't be cowering or buckling because somebody talking to you tough or getting offended, because that tough talk is to save your life. So when you talk outside the battle, outside of the battlefield, then you deal with them. You talk to them one-on-one. Hey, what's going on? I notice things aren't what they should be here. You have something going on that we need to talk about. What's happening? You go to them. You don't assume. You go to them, and you uncover what's going on. But once you uncover it, you don't just tell them to fix it. You let them know, okay, this is what I'm going to do to assist you with this. That's how you deal with them there. In the heat of battle, do it. Move now. And you have enough people, enough Marines. If they don't move, they're going to get moved. So it doesn't matter. If they freeze and can't move, they're going to be moved. They're going to move. I don't even know any other way to put it. They'll move.
No, I love that because sometimes, God can't wait for you to finish being starstruck with the situation and the direction you're going. It's time for you to move. Um, I love that. And one of the things that I want to make sure I'm pointing out is it takes a lot sometimes because, like I was saying earlier, we often deal with our own mental health, but sometimes we got to check on what they say, check on the strong friend that's always checking up on everybody. In that case, for the saints, let's check up on our leaders because they're always praying for us and they're always looking out for us, giving up, their lives for the ministry so that we can be wherever we need to go as God leads them. When I think about that, that correlation of life is still going to happen regardless of how you feel about it or what your thoughts about it. Life is going to, and guess what, battle still happens too. So regardless, the battles may change, but the principle is the same. You need to lock in on what God and the orders that God gave you, and that keeps you grounded, that keeps you whole, that keeps you spiritually locked in and intact. Minister Dixon, before we get out of here, I want you to words of wisdom to followers first, and words of support to our leaders.
Okay. Words of wisdom to the followers. Again, understand that your leader has your best interest at heart. That's who they've been called to be, particularly in ministry. And when you look on the job, they may not always have your best interest at heart, but you still have to do what the word tells you, to work heartily, wholeheartedly, as unto the Lord, not as unto men, as men pleasers. This is your position. Sort of like I was telling my young Marines. It's not our position to critique them. It's our position to keep them successful. That's what you are to do. That's what the Bible requires. Whether you like them, because I say this thing about them, when you go to a job, you put in an application. There's nothing on the application that says that your employer must like you. There's nothing that says that you must like them. The agreement is that they're going to offer you employment for labor that you are promising to provide. They're offering you pay and or benefits. When you agree, that's what you're agreeing to. You're not agreeing to your supervisor's personality. They're not agreeing to yours either. So you have to understand, stick to the agreement. Provide what you told them you were going to provide. Whether they do their part or not, now you can bring the legal side in if you need to, but your role is to do what you agreed to do, regardless of how they're acting. You stick to your part of it. Let God deal with the rest. That's on that side. Support for the leaders. I just say that those who are under them continue to keep your leaders undergirded in prayer. And for those who are not leading or following properly, continue to lift them before the Lord, but don't you carry the burden. You see, God has promised to perfect those things. It's God's thing to perfect those things concerning us. One version says to complete us. That's God's role. He'll perfect those things. He tells us to lay aside every weight and the sin which do so easily beset us. That's what he tells us to do. We do that, and the leaders can do that, what they need to do. But leaders do not carry the stuff that people want to pack on you. That's not yours. That's God's. The people, he's placed you over. But he knew them before they hit this earth, before they were formed in their mother's womb. He knew them. He knew all the things they were going to do, all the disrespectful things, all the things they were going to do against their leadership. God knew it. He still chose to create them and to sustain them. So I just urge leaders to continue to love, stay in prayer, and don't allow what is going on to bring you to a place of a Moses situation. because Moses was going through some stuff. I'm not negating the fact that he had a lot going on, but it's very, very, very crucial that he missed the thing that he was leading the people into. He missed that opportunity out of all that he had done. And the truth, and I'm sharing this with the leaders because God never stopped loving Moses. He never stopped loving Moses, but he had to respond to what Moses did. That's just that's the protocol. That's what was established. So he had to deal with it, but he never stopped loving Moses. So I just, like I said, encourage the leaders to be encouraged, even when people aren't doing what they need to do. That's not yours. That's God's.
Mr. Dixon, thank you so much. This whole thing has been profound. I learned so much about being in the Marine Corps, the fundamentals, the understanding, the way of life. And I've always likened being a soldier to being a soldier in the army of the Lord. So it was excellent to hear the real life correlation and combination coming from you. So I want to just say thank you so much. You have been awesome. Thank you all so much for being a part of this. We're going to sign out here. I appreciate every single one of you. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And just continue to share this with somebody that could need it. This is some fantastic information Minister Dixon gave us. And it's something that somebody else needs to hear. I can't thank you all enough. It's been an awesome Temple Talk. We will be back again when we have another phenomenal guest. And make sure you go follow Helping Hands Ministry on Facebook, on YouTube, and all the social media platforms as well. Thank you so much again. And we look forward to hearing from you again. Minister Dixon,
Minister
thank you.
Dixon, thank you.
Have a blessed one,
Have a
everybody.
blessed one, everybody.
All right. God bless.